Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I will be your host, Madhuri Sira, Senior Leader Transportation Planning on behalf of the Southern Alberta Executive. I welcome you to the March webinar. I hope you're all doing good, safe and healthy. Are we marching towards spring yet? I am very hopeful that this year we will march towards in-person luncheons and soon our kids will go to mask-free schools. It will soon be a year since our section pivoted from luncheons to webinars. We're actually the first section in Canada to do that. And thanks for being with us during this whole year. And a huge thank you and kudos to the executive, the past and present executive, and also a huge thanks to our CITE administration team here for the support. I'm very excited about the webinar today. Our speakers are here from Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome, Wulf and Jennifer. Thanks for traveling all the way to Calgary. It's a beautiful day here in Calgary at -2 degrees centigrade. Let me translate that for you. It's 28 degrees Fahrenheit. If you were here, I would have said, please feel at home. But since you're already in your homes, you just have to adjust your thermostats to really feel like you're in Calgary. Thank you for joining us. Wulf and Jennifer are here to talk to us about Valley Metro. Valley Metro is as old as my oldest son here. We just discussed, I was there in Phoenix when it's opened. So I'm really excited about the presentation. Valley Metro opened a 20-mile starter light rail line in 2008 and have since expanded it another 8 miles. There are currently 4 construction projects underway to add 2 light rail extensions, build the region's first streetcar, and expand the operations and maintenance facility. The light rail system is mostly exclusive guideway at grade on arterials, and ridership has exceeded expectations. So I thought it'd be a very good presentation for us to hear. So here they are. Quick introduction to our speakers. Wulf Grote. Wulf is a fellow member of ITE. He is the former Director of Capital and Service Development for Valley Metro in Phoenix, Arizona. While at Valley Metro, Wulf oversaw rail and bus facility planning, transit system and service planning, design and construction, art and community relations. He has been a leader in transit development for Phoenix Metropolitan Area since 1985. Prior to joining Valley Metro, he spent 23 years with the City of Phoenix Public Transit Department, ultimately as Assistant Transit Director. Wulf also worked in Denver as a transportation engineer for the Regional Transportation District and a national engineering consulting firm. Wulf has a Bachelor and Master of Science degrees in Civil Engineering from the University of Utah and is a registered professional engineer in the state of Arizona. Wulf's wife, Jenny Grote, is also a transportation professional and my mentor. Wulf, what an amazing career you had. A very successful public sector career while supporting a spouse who also had a very successful public sector career. You both had glorious ITE careers, raising 2 wonderful daughters at the same time. Ravi and I look up to you guys a lot. You are that inspiring couple for us. What is the advice you can give to the audience on how to balance it all together?
Okay, well, first of all, hello. Yeah, this is Wulf Grote. And as Madhuri mentioned, Jenny was not only a Deputy Street Transportation Director, she was also very, very engaged and still is very engaged in ITE, both locally and internationally. She was international president. So not only did we have these stresses and challenges of work locally, but also she, for a period of time, was traveling internationally. So on a regular basis. So that was so there was a lot of challenges there. But I would, you ask about success and what to advise people of, and I think success comes in 2 different categories actually for me. One is success at work, and what I found over the years is to be successful at work means you have to be willing to put in the extra efforts, and that 40 hours a week is not gonna move you up. And it takes a lot of extra work. On the other side, on the other success is success at home. And I think that's equally, if not more important than success at work, and making sure that you make time for your family, spend time, if you have kids, spend time in their lives and their events. To me, that was, that was hard to do, but I always made sure that I made that time. And my wife and I have been, Jenny and I have been married for 41 years. So I guess we did something right, not that we didn't have challenges along the way, but overall, I think it's, again, you really have to work at both sides. It doesn't just happen on the work side. It doesn't just happen on the family side. It takes a lot of work.
Thank you very much, Wulf, for that. I thought it's important that we learn from your experience. So I asked that question, and thank you very much. Welcome, Jennifer. Jennifer is currently the Assistant Director in Valley Metro's Capital Development Division. While at Valley Metro, Jennifer has been responsible for corridor planning for high-capacity transit services in the Phoenix Metropolitan Area, design and construction of rail capital projects, the agency's environmental programs, and coordination with FTA on capital projects, Federal Transit Authority. Jennifer has over 23 years of transportation and environmental planning experience in Arizona. Her transit experience has included all types of transportation modes, from bus transit to light rail and commuter rail, as well as roadway, bike, and pedestrian planning, and effectively integrating public involvement into the technical process. She has a Master's of Environmental Planning from Arizona State University and received her bachelor's from Oberlin College in Oberlin, Ohio. Jennifer is a member of Railvolution National Steering Committee and has been engaged with Arizona for over 5 years as a co-chair of the Transportation Committee, Arizona Forward, which is currently focused on understanding the potential impacts of new and emerging transportation technologies on our infrastructure and communities. Welcome, Jennifer. Jennifer, we just celebrated International Women's Day yesterday. The theme was Choose to Challenge. In your current role and everyday life, what do you choose to challenge? What advice can you give to the young women in the audience who look up to the leaders like you?
Hi, Margie. Thank you. Thanks for the question and for the introduction. And thanks for having us here today. I was thinking about that question that Margie shared in advance, and it's a interesting one. At Valley Metro, I find that the leadership here is actually, from a gender perspective, pretty balanced, but the design and construction arenas are not. And I've always had a background in planning, and when I started to take on a role, more of a role with regard to the construction projects and the engineering activities here at Valley Metro, I was told on a couple of occasions by a few people that I might have some trouble, like people might not take me seriously, or I don't know, or that there's going to be a bias against being a woman in that part of the agency. And in a way, I haven't found that because it's just not how just hasn't really been my experience. But on the other hand, I do feel like when you're in an environment that is very male dominated, I think that women put pressure on themselves to up their game. You have to be maybe ultra prepared, or you feel like you have to be ultra prepared just in case there's somebody there who kind of comes at it with a perception of, maybe you're, not as qualified as you should be. And so when I think about it, and I think about all the other women who are in either the engineering or construction fields here, they tend to be real top performers. And I wonder if that's because they feel the same way, that you really need to up your game, when there are so few women in the field, or maybe there are just so few women that if you are following an engineering or construction path, you're really dedicated, you're really passionate about it, and so I think that also will naturally make you more successful. So that's just a few of my thoughts on that.
Thank you for that. With that, let's welcome the speakers, and over to you, Wulf. Please walk us through the presentation. Audience, if you can hold off to your questions to the end, or towards the end, keep popping them onto the chat. I will moderate the questions in the end. And also just a reminder to please mute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madhuri. Again, this is Wulf Grote. Just a little bit more on my background. I just retired from Valley Metro at the end of December, so I'm still getting used to not being a full-time employee anymore, and so, but everything's still fresh in my mind, so I can give you a lot of good history, and that's really my purpose in this presentation today, is to talk about the kind of how we got to where we are. And then Jennifer Pine will take over and talk to you about what we're doing now as we're expanding. Actually, there's a significant expansion program going on in the Phoenix Metropolitan Area. So go ahead, next. So for those of you who've not been to Phoenix, Arizona before, there's some similarities and there's some significant differences. And we've had a little conversation about some of those differences already, but as you can see, Phoenix lies in kind of a plateau area. It's surrounded by mountains, not unlike Calgary. I know the Rockies are right there around Calgary, so that's where the similarities are. But the main difference is that there are no trees on our mountains, and also we in the wintertime we really enjoy very pleasant weather. In the summertime we make up for it by having extreme warmth, but it gives you an idea, and I'll be talking a little bit more about Phoenix and the metropolitan area as we go through. Go ahead. One of the things next. One of the things that you may or may not know is that Calgary, the city of Calgary, is I just lost the screen here. What happened? Oh, all right, something. Okay, I'm okay now. Somehow I must have touched something on my computer. The cities of Calgary and Phoenix are sister cities, and so there's regular communication on the business side between the cities. And I had the opportunity almost 20 years ago now to be on a sister cities mission to Calgary with a number of business representatives, folks from the city, and our mayor, Skip Remza, who was asked if he wanted to drive the train when we were in Calgary. So these are pictures of him driving the train. And actually that was very helpful for us because our mayor became known as the light rail mayor, and really helped us to find the funding to make light rail happen in Phoenix, and was a significant supporter locally on the political side. So that was really an important start for us. Go ahead, next. Just a little bit of history. Of course, we're doing light rail now, but just like many other cities around North America, late 1800s to mid 1900s, we had a significant street railway system, streetcar system. I don't know the exact number of miles, but it was like 30 to 40 miles, or at least of lines that were throughout the metropolitan area. Go ahead, next. This is just a shot of in the latter days of the operation. It was obviously, you can see, very full, but successful. This is in downtown Phoenix. It looks very different today than what it did then. But then in the late 40s, I think it was 1948 or so, there was a mysterious car barn fire which actually burnt up almost all of the vehicles. I think there were 2 or 3 of them that were salvaged, but everything else was gone, and with that, that was the end of the era for streetcars in Phoenix. Next. So what happened after that, and even during that time, buses became more popular. Initially, the bus operation was a private operation around 1970 or so. the bus operation turned over to the city, and this is in 1985. This is when I actually entered into the fold there. The population of Phoenix in the region was just about a little over 1.5 million people. There was no dedicated regional funding for public transportation. There was no dedicated local funding for public transportation. And the city of Phoenix really was the only of, the many suburbs that are around Phoenix. The city of Phoenix was the only city that was really into public transportation at the time. And they used general fund monies, which compete with fire and police and garbage collection and libraries and all those things. And so it was just a very, very bare bones service. Even though there were a few routes that were maybe 15 to 30-minute service, there were lots that were maybe hourly or 2-hour service. Evenings after 7, there was nothing. Saturdays, there was a skeletal operation. Sundays, there was no operation at all. So it was really not a good service. It was really just there to meet a basic need, and that was it. And since that time, there's been a lot of effort to make public transportation a more prominent player in the transportation role in Phoenix Metropolitan Area. Go ahead. So, whoops, there you go. So there were in the late 1989, there was a major attempt to fund a expanded transit system. It was a sales tax measure for a 0.5-cent sales tax, and it went down in flames, but it had 103 miles of elevated rail, and it was actually modeled after the Vancouver SkyTrain system. And there was a quadrupling of the bus program that was all to be done with that did not pass. There was another lesser attempt, really didn't have much rail, but a lot of bus improvements in 1994, was split between highways and transit. That also narrowly failed. And next, then there was recognition that there were some cities that could have provided funding locally. Go ahead, next. Yeah, just go ahead and there you go. Okay. So nope, going too far. So there were some local measures that did pass. First in the city of Tempe, which is a smaller community, and then the city of Phoenix, the largest community in the state, that passed local sales taxes for public transportation. Finally, in 2004, there was a regional sales tax split between highways and transit. Just 1/3 of the funds went to transit. And then since that time, there's been a renewal of the city tax, which only had a 20-year life. And the regional tax also only has a 20-year life. So there's a process going on right now to define how that's going to continue beyond 2025. So all of these things together, not one by themselves, but all of these different actions together has helped public transportation be put on the map in Phoenix, and also helped to start building our light rail system. Next. Just a little bit about Phoenix and the growth. As I mentioned earlier, when in 1985, we were roughly a little over 1.5 million, 1.8 million. We've grown to about 4.8 million, almost 5 million people in the Phoenix metropolitan area now. During that same time period, the transit boardings went from 17 million a year to 65 million a year. And if you can see the numbers here, you can see that the number of boardings actually outpaced the population growth during those years. So we were making some successful strides towards putting in a public transportation system. Go ahead, next. And that growth continues. The forecast for 2050, as you can see, is close to 8 million. So we're expanding at about 1 million residents every 10 years in our metro area, and it's one of the fastest growing in the nation. Keep going. So now this is some of the facts. I'm not going to go into the specifics here, but you can see that there's a whole host of different kinds of services, all of them working together to make public transportation a success in our metro area. And we do now finally have late night service. We do have Sunday service. We have a lot more frequency of service as well. And of course, we have light rail, which I'm going to be talking to you about coming up here. Next. So let's talk a little bit about our successes in light rail specifically. Next. The light rail idea of light rail started back in the 1980s, but the actual first project that was initiated was a 20-mile light rail line connecting 3 cities, and I'll show you that in the map in a second here. But the effort took about 12 years from the start of planning to the opening for operations. So we opened in December of 2008. Next. So the line that we have now has been expanded. We have a total of 28 miles today. And what we found is that about a fourth of all of the transit riders in our metropolitan area are using light rail. And that, so it's connecting central Phoenix. It goes all the way through the city of Tempe, which is where Arizona State University is headquartered. And they have well over 60,000 students there. I think it's one of the largest, if not the largest, campus in the country. And then we also go into Mesa. On the east side is downtown Mesa, and Mesa is the 3rd largest city in the state of Arizona. Go ahead, next. So I know that we're talking to traffic engineers here, so I wanted to make sure I did a little bit of traffic talk. 27 of our 28 miles are in street, unlike some rail lines that are operating in railroad rights of way or freeway rights of way. Almost all of our operation is in street, and so we have well over 200 signalized intersections. We have light rail gets priority at those intersections. It's not unconditional preemption like emergency equipment gets, but we do have priority that helps us to move. Next. A big decision that we had to make was whether to keep all the traffic lanes and expand the right-of-way, or do we eliminate traffic lanes to preserve the private businesses and properties along the routes? And one of the things that we've done for the miles that we've built, and we continue to do it on our expansion program, is pretty much the vast majority of the miles we are removing existing traffic lanes to fit the light rail in. Although we have had some areas, particularly the one on the right, where we did keep all of the street traffic lanes in order to fit the light rail, and it was a major right-of-way acquisition program and wiping out most businesses along that particular street. If you look on the left side, on the right slide, the right picture on the slide, on the left side, those are all businesses that are no longer there. It's now vacant lots. Go ahead, next. Just a couple of shots, just give you an idea of what happens here. This is Central Avenue, our main business artery in Phoenix. It was 3 lanes in each direction prior to light rail. Next. And then with light rail in it, this is a station area here. There's no vehicles in it for light rail, but you can see that there's now only 2 through traffic lanes that are continuing on either side. And had we continued to widen and keep all the traffic lanes, we would have affected some of those high rises that you're looking at, and that was not in the cards. Next. On the other end of the system in Mesa, one of our more recent expansions, this is going through downtown Mesa. Not a huge downtown, but it had a lot of small businesses along there, 2 lanes in each direction for traffic, a parking lane, and there was a huge discussion and decision that had to be made is, do we take the parking out or do we take the lane in order to keep the businesses intact? And you'll see on the next slide, the end results is we kept the parking. Yeah, that was more important to the businesses than keeping 2 traffic lanes through downtown Mesa. We still have turn lanes, but only 1 through lane on each direction through downtown Mesa, and it's actually been working quite well, and Mesa is very happy with what they have there. Next slide. So just a quick summary of some of the traffic discussion. Of our 28 miles, 22 of those miles are in the street median. Some of them are on the side, especially where we have one-way streets. We have them on the side. By coincidence, we also have 22 of 28 miles that we reduced from, we reduced by one traffic lane in each direction as well. As I mentioned earlier, we have priority at signals. We make sure that we have adequate left turn opportunities because people want to access their businesses, so every quarter mile. What we've found is in the 12 years that we've been operating light rail is that we continue to have traffic moving very well. Never have been any major issues or concerns about the loss of lanes. Some of the traffic has moved to other streets, and some of those people are now using the transit system. And so overall, we've been able to increase the person carrying capacity of these streets where we've implemented the light rail system. Next. So overall, to date, you can see the projects we've actually expanded in 3 small projects, but we've spent about $2.3 billion. This is US dollars. Go ahead to the next slide. And you'll see for that $2.3 billion investment that we have had some significant successes in our view. This is, again, these numbers are all pre-COVID because, we know that COVID has had a significant impact on public transportation. And we'll talk about that, or Jennifer will talk about that in a little bit. But we were, on an average weekday, we carry about 50,000 riders. This, again, was pre-COVID. One of the things that we discovered was that prior to light rail, about almost half of the people that are now using light rail did not use public transportation prior to that. So we did attract a lot of new people to the system by making this addition. Next. Also, again, for the $2.3 billion investment, we have seen a huge amount of economic investment around our stations within walking distance. We have seen over $14 billion of investment, much of that in residential, but also a significant amount in commercial and also some public and education uses as well. Next. And, lastly, this is actually my last slide, is that not only has it been successful in bringing riders and in development, but it's also helped us to attract major national, or in some cases international events to the Phoenix area. We call these mega events. It's not the light rail by itself, but light rail is a major component. When these kind of events come around, they're looking for good transportation networks. The biggest day of our ridership was actually in 2015, right before the Super Bowl football game that was not even played in downtown Phoenix. It was played out in one of our suburbs, but there were several days of NFL experience, and we were carrying, I think it was close to 130,000 riders for each of those days. Huge rise, much more than twice what we carry on a regular day. And we've also had similar results with other events coming to Phoenix. We've also been able to attract events into the future. The next Super Bowl in 2023 will be played in Phoenix, in the Phoenix Metropolitan Area again. So overall, we've had some great successes. We're having some challenges today and relative to COVID, but that'll pass too. And we're still doing a lot of expansion, and that's where Jen comes in. So I'm going to let her take it from here.
All right, thanks, Wulf. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on right now with our current activities expanding the rail program. So this is our map of the high capacity transit corridors. It's what we're implementing right now. So on this map, the yellow line is the existing or the currently operating light rail. And we have under construction 2 light rail extensions, a streetcar out in Tempe, and we're expanding our operations and maintenance center. In addition, we have some corridors that are still in planning mode that should be coming down a little bit later. So I'm going to start talking about the Tempe streetcar. So we're actually completing construction of the streetcar. Now, this is a simulation, but this project is located in downtown Tempe, which is where the main campus of Arizona State University is, and a very vibrant, pedestrian-oriented college town kind of downtown. And so we think it's a great application of a streetcar type of project. This project was in planning mode from about 2014 to 2018. And that was a challenging time. There was a lot of debating the alignment, where the route should go, and how do we fit into the budget. And I think Wulf would probably agree there are probably times when we thought this thing's never going to get built. We should just forget it. But here we are. I mean, we are substantially complete with construction right now. And I'll show you a couple photos. But I did want to note one interesting thing about the streetcar is that it will be a dual mode operation. That means that it will, run on an overhead wire for most of the route, but in the downtown area, which is where this picture is taken, it'll be actually off wire and operating on a battery. And that was decided really just to fit the conditions on Mill Avenue in downtown Tempe, which is pretty dense, a lot of trees, a lot of historic buildings, and we worked carefully with stakeholders to make that decision. So we're just about complete with construction. I mean, it actually looks like a streetcar system. The rails all on the ground, the stops are all built. Somebody was telling me the other day that they saw a person sitting at one of the stops. But unfortunately, we don't have our vehicles yet, so it won't be operating for a while, but it really is just about complete. Before I move on to that one, I just want to note, one of our big challenges on this project probably was working with the businesses in downtown Tempe, who were very concerned about disruptions during construction, and reasonably so. So we, at the very onset of construction, initiated a very robust business assistance program that is still continuing, and worked very closely with all the businesses. We also implemented programs to really promote and advertise the businesses and try to drive more people into those businesses, especially during construction. And I think by most accounts that was very successful, and we were able to build up a strong set of relationships with the business community that really helped us all out. We have a team of 3 people who are dedicated to community and business relations just on this project. So I mentioned that we're just about done with construction, but we're actually not expecting to start operations until this fall. And that's partly due to delays in receiving the streetcar vehicles. So these pictures were taken back in January. My first vehicle, we actually had some folks out there a couple weeks ago, and the first streetcar shipped just the other day. So we should receive it later this week. So that's exciting. Ultimately, we're going to have 6 vehicles. And so between now and when we open, we're going to be going through the testing and training of operators. Next project I'll talk about is South Central in the downtown hub. This is one of our light rail extensions. It's about 5.5 miles, and this was, from a stakeholder perspective, an interesting one. We were in planning and design mode, I would say, for maybe longer than normal. This part of South Central that you see in the photo was kind of a focus area for particularly businesses, but also some residents who were very concerned about this project. We were proposing to reduce, take away a traffic lane in each direction. And that was the initial concern. That, as Wulf alluded to, we've actually had that debate probably on every single project. And in this case, a lot of the businesses and the residents were concerned about losing that capacity. And there was quite a bit of debate. We implemented quite a bit of additional kind of community outreach to work through some of those issues. But some people were certainly very opposed to this project, and ultimately drove us to a ballot initiative that it was on the ballot in the city of Phoenix in August of 2019. And basically, if that initiative had passed, it would have ended all light rail construction and expansion in the city of Phoenix. So it was not just this project, but the entire light rail program. So last August, August of 2019, it was on the ballot, and actually it was a very decisive outcome in favor of the light rail program. Nearly 70% of people, their vote was against the proposal, which meant they wanted the light rail program to continue in the city of Phoenix. So that initiative really was tough for us to navigate, in that we were right on the cusp of entering construction. But pleased when the initiative concluded and we were able to start construction pretty much right away after that. So one interesting thing about the South Central project is it's really going to change the nature of our system. So this map shows what it is right now. It's basically one line that goes back and forth. But when South Central opens, it's going to change into a two-line system. We'll have a north-south and an east-west two lines that meet in downtown Phoenix at what we'll be calling the downtown hub. And building out that downtown hub is part of the South Central project. Just to give you an example of what that's like, this is one of the concepts for what things will be like when South Central is completed. Central Avenue, and this where the simulation is right now, is it's just a normal city street. So in this case, we're proposing moving it to a transit way and pedestrian way. And it's just one of the elements of how this project is really going to change the feel and the nature of downtown. But where this is right now actually looks like this right now. We're in the middle of it. We've torn up a lot of downtown actually, and are really in utility relocation mode. You're starting to see the track actually be put in a couple of places, but most of downtown where we're working looks more like this. So there are a couple spots where track is starting to go in downtown, and this is one of them. This is where our new rail will be tying in with some of the old rail. And this is a really challenging part of the construction for us, because we need to shut down our service on the parts of the track where the tie-ins are occurring. And so this took months and months of planning. We actually finished one portion of this just a couple of weeks ago, where we do single tracking. So we run all of our service on what was formerly the westbound running track, and then we're going to flip it later this month and do it the other way. So it affects our service on the whole system. We have about 2 weeks to get in there and rip out track and do the tie-ins and fix it up, get it ready to run regular service again. To support the South Central project, but really all of the expansion of the system, we are expanding the operations and maintenance center. Right now, before the expansion, the OMC had the capacity for about 50 vehicles, and when we're done, it should have the capacity for 90. So we're expanding buildings for maintenance of way, maintenance of equipment. We're adding track, we're adding cleaning platforms, just to really expand the capacity of that facility. So yet another light rail extension project that's just entered construction last year is Northwest Phase 2. So this will be a about 1.6 mile extension on the very northern end of the current light rail system. So it's not very long, but it has some kind of interesting aspects to it. One is that it's going to be crossing an interstate freeway, which is what you can see in this photo, and it will be our first aerial station on the system. And that the simulation of what we think that's going to look like is shown here. We did just start construction on this last year. As with South Central, we're starting with the utility relocations, which take a good chunk of time and are pretty disruptive for adjacent property owners and people traveling through the area. And eventually we get into actually laying the track and putting in the stations. I wanted to talk a little bit too about a project that is still in planning mode for us, the Capital I-10 West Corridor. We've been looking at this as a project that's going to be implemented in 2 phases. The first phase would be in downtown Phoenix, and it will serve to connect, the downtown hub that we are building out now with the state capitol, which is about, a mile and a half away, and really just bring together this whole downtown core area. So the area that this extension would be serving includes the state capitol, but also a lot of the state agencies that are located in the vicinity. So this photo is Washington Street, which is one of the streets where the extension will occur. Just gives you an idea of what we're trying to fit into. The second phase of that project would start at the state capitol and continue for another 8 miles or so into West Phoenix. This is a big commuter corridor, and we've worked out an agreement with the Arizona Department of Transportation to actually build the transit corridor within the I-10 right-of-way. And you can see from the photo here, the I-10, in this part of town is kind of a commuting nightmare. It's very, very busy, especially during the peak period. So we think that this connection can provide people a lot of great options to get to work, or for whatever reason they're going downtown. So what we've been discussing with ADOT is to locate the corridor within the right-of-way, but on the north side. So the north side of the traffic lanes, where you can see we have space there next to a drainage channel. So this is a simulation showing a potential light rail corridor in that area, but we actually are still looking at other modes and whether a rubber tired or bus option might work here as well. So if we had a few minutes, I was just going to comment on kind of the COVID impacts on transit at Valley Metro. Certainly, we, like many transit agencies, have experienced that. I think it's been a reminder that transit is very important to our essential workers to get to work or wherever people need to go. This next chart just shows ridership. And again, like many transit agencies, there's been a huge drop in ridership. Probably we're about 50% where we would normally be. And just to help orient you to this graphic, the orange dashed lines are ridership from our last non-COVID year compared to what we are seeing in 2020 and a little bit into 2021. Although we are at about 50% overall, I actually think that experience is a little bit less dramatic than maybe some other cities like San Francisco, who actually had much greater drops in ridership. And we kind of attribute that to just the number of essential workers who are reliant on our system. As far as our construction projects go, it's COVID-19's kind of been interesting there. It has actually given us some opportunities to progress the work that we otherwise would not have had. Right now we're doing utility relocations in downtown Phoenix, and normally there'd be a lot of special events that we would have to work around, and people are commuting in and out every day, and that really hasn't been happening. Downtown, there are many fewer people downtown these days than there were a couple years ago, and essentially no events. So it's allowed us to close additional traffic lanes and take other actions like that help us keep all the construction work moving. We've had to add, additional safety procedures. Certainly, we monitor the callouts on the construction crews every day, and luckily, perhaps we haven't seen a huge impact. There really hasn't been so much of an impact on our construction from people who are not able to come into work because they're sick or need to quarantine. So perhaps we've been lucky in that way, or all the precautions are probably helping us out as well. One area where we have seen an impact is with kind of supply chain. Certainly, as I mentioned on the streetcar, some of the vehicle manufacturers are delayed, and we've certainly seen that. Some of our long lead procurement items, we haven't had any major issues there, but we're monitoring that to see if there's going to be some lagging effect on materials coming in later than we expect or than we need them. So I think that is the end of the presentation, and I'm sure Wulf and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation and the small trip down to Phoenix for us. We definitely appreciate those sunny pictures more now. Thank you very much. And what a variety of LRT projects. You know, LRT is not new to Calgary, but context is definitely different. There's a question here about the challenges coordinating with the various levels of government. Within Calgary, the LRT lines are all within the boundary of the city, so there is one governing body, if you will. What are some challenges you faced when you were planning this line across the jurisdictions?
Sure. This is Wulf. I'll take that. I don't know, Jen, do you want to shut down the presentation? Maybe we can get. I don't know if we need to continue that, but anyway, let me answer that. I'll try to answer that question. When we initiated our initial project, our 20-mile project, as you saw, the project went across 3 different cities in our metropolitan area: Phoenix, Tempe, and Mesa. And getting them all to agree on what we were doing was a significant challenge for us. And getting everybody even on the same page, even on color of vehicles. You know, we had early graphics that we were showing that had the same color, using our Valley Metro colors for Phoenix and Mesa, but Tempe in between wanted a red vehicle. So we had graphics that showed different things in different cities. Now, I don't know how we'd ever have accomplished that. We have to put a paint booth at each city boundary every time the trains go through in order to make that work. But we got past that. So fortunately, we were able to work that out. And actually what we had to do in order to satisfy the federal government, who was going to be funding about half of our project, we ended up putting together a public nonprofit corporation that brought the 3 cities together into a board of directors. And actually other cities have joined that organization as well over the time. But that was a very important thing to do. The other thing that we also recognized early on, just besides the political aspects of it, was that we needed to work very, very closely with the cities. And in our case, it wasn't just, you know, we're not an independent entity that has its own funding. We rely on a lot of city funds to help us. We rely on some of their funds to help us with capital. And for light rail, we don't have a regional source for operating. All of the funding that we get for operating the light rail system comes from the cities. So here, again, they're very heavily vested into this program. So it was very important for us to develop a strong relationship with city staff. Early on, we had people from the city of Phoenix, and we still do have people from the cities that are housed in the Valley Metro offices with our organization to maximize that coordination and to make sure that decisions were being addressed quickly. And that has helped us a lot over the years to have people working that closely together with us. And but also, you know, we didn't get into this today, but our Valley Metro is actually made up of 2 different organizations. We have Valley Metro Rail, which is the rail element, and then we have the Regional Public Transportation Authority, which is our regional transit umbrella. And they don't, the RPTA, as it's called, operates some of the bus service, but it's also operated by other cities as well. So we use that organization through RPTA as a coordination point for all of our transit services. We have a service planning working group, or we have, well, they have, I'm not there anymore. Service planning working group that coordinates operations and around between the cities, you know, connecting with light rail, connecting between buses, all those kinds of things. So it's very complex, actually. And I don't know, Jen, if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think you got it. And I guess the only thing I would add is that one thing we've experienced, especially on Capital I-10 project, which is still in planning, is the state government and the city government, and trying to navigate between those levels who have different jurisdictions and responsibilities, you know, has been kind of an interesting challenge. Most of the projects we're implementing right now are actually, they're each in their own city, but the starter line, as Wulf mentioned, crossed into 3.
Yeah, Thank you. That sounds so much complex than what we are dealing with here now. The next question. Who is the manufacturer for Tempe Streetcar Vehicles? Very specific technical question here.
It's Brookville, which is located in Pennsylvania.
Okay. What is the current passengers per hour per direction for the lines in what headways and what train configuration? We can tell this is not at all coming from a train person.
I'll start that one. As Jen was mentioning, we've had some impact on our transit system overall, and we've had to reduce from, we had 12-minute frequency during peak periods of the day, actually for most of the day. That has been changed to 15 minutes. And when we started operation, we were actually at 10-minute frequency during peaks, and we had to change that during the recession that hit back around 2008, 2009. And so overall, I would say we run two-car trains and three-car trains, mostly two-car trains. So the hourly directional capacity is probably between 2,000 and 3,000 people per hour. But again, that varies depending on the number of cars that are being used.
Okay, thank you. Are the light rail operations based on line of sight or a signal system?
Signal system.
Okay.
Although the streetcar will be more line of sight.
Right. Question from Ravi here, our manager of traffic. Not about traffic, but can you please share some more details about the business support program and how do you calculate compensation to businesses?
I can maybe start on that one. We don't compensate businesses directly, but we do promote them. We'll develop marketing programs to support businesses who are along the corridors where we're constructing. And we do provide technical assistance, meaning businesses who are along the corridor can have access to different services that we'll provide, from developing, maybe improving their website, or maybe accounting support. We do provide that and have an established program. We've been doing that on all of our projects, actually. Each project usually has at least one and sometimes more people who are dedicated to working with the businesses. And their goal is to go out and get to know all of the people, make sure people are aware of the different opportunities and types of support that are available, and then help them navigate to get assistance. The one area that's kind of interesting, it's not exactly compensation, but we've been able to do it in a couple of places. One is Mesa is kind of help people get a break on their utility bills. And again, this is specifically for businesses that are right along corridor that's being disrupted by construction. And we're actually exploring that kind of financial assistance with the City of Phoenix right now for the businesses along the South Central corridor. That would be similarly like a kind of a break on utility bills. We're working with some of the local utility providers to see if we can make that program work.
Okay, thank you. What are the operating speeds of the train? How does travel time compare to a passenger car? Was this a hurdle to justify lack of preemption or slower speeds?
I'll start with that one. So the operating speeds, well, first of all, the maximum operating speed of our light rail vehicles is around 55, 60 miles an hour top speed that it can do. The operating speeds are, since we're operating in a street environment, the operating speeds are the top speeds in any given street is the same as the speed limit for the road. So if the street's a 35 mile an hour street, then the light rail is also a 35 mile an hour as well. And we in many cases, as far as as part of our progression that we operate, we're able to, because there's a lot of streets with parallel traffic, we're able to move pretty efficiently through the network, while adjacent through movement for automobiles is also moving. So we're not seeing a lot of impact to the automobile traffic there. I'm not sure if I really fully answered the question. If there's any further question on that, feel free.
Okay, I have tons of questions, which I'll probably take it offline with you guys.
Okay.
We're looking at the questions from the group here. Can you comment on split corridor operations, passenger circulation, wayfinding, and land acquisition?
Well, we have by split corridor, I was thinking like in downtown Phoenix right now, we have the eastbound and the westbound tracks are not in the same place. They're like maybe a block apart through downtown. And so it's always been that way in downtown. So it's kind of always been part of our, mapping and public information. But with the downtown hub, we're taking it to a new level of complexity, I think, because we're going to be having a lot more stops and sort of a hub environment. We're kind of thinking of it as our kind of outdoor central station for rail. And wayfinding has been a topic of interest for us. We are actually exploring that right now, the best way to help people navigate, all these different stations within, a pretty tight area that are going in different directions. So that's something that we're still working on, but certainly thinking a lot about. And traffic impacts are going to, there's just going to be more trains, operating more frequently in the downtown area where you'll have these two lines coming together. So that's something that we work very closely with the city of Phoenix with in that case to prepare as best we can. And, in some places like on Central Avenue, in some of the photos that we showed, we're actually going to shut it down to car traffic.
Okay, thank you for that. We are 2 minutes. If you were to give a couple advices to the team that's planning light rail transit right now, similar to the one that you have in Mesa, surface running LRT, what would it be coming from your experience? What could be some of the surprises that you had to go through and some advice there?
Well, from my experience, everything takes longer than you expect it to take. It's important that you really work closely with the community early on. You don't want to be in final design having the community decide what you're doing isn't the right thing. Working with the community during planning, making sure that you early in design that you spend a lot of effort not only with the community, but with the cities, in our case, involved, and the city staffs and the agencies involved, making sure that you really understand everybody's expectations early on. Because if you wait longer, it's going to cost you a lot more. It's easy to fix things in planning, relatively easy to fix things in planning, but it's very difficult to fix something when you're in design, and it's even more difficult, if not impossible, to fix something when you're in construction. And so get the big decisions made early and make sure everybody's on the same page, and keep reminding people of the decisions that you've made so that they don't come back and try to undo them.
Thank you for that. We're at 1 o'clock. So that concludes our presentation. Thank you again for joining us today, Wulf and Jennifer. This is really great. One of those great opportunities that COVID has created for us, an expansion of that knowledge base and for us to learn from each other. Thank you again. I will keep a track on any questions that come to me afterwards, and I do have a few questions as well, and I will follow up if that's okay with you guys.
Sure. Yeah, we're happy to participate. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
all. Mm-hmm.